Hello class, my name is Jeffrey McGriff and today I'm going to talk to you about servant leadership. I'm also going to touch on the history of servant leadership, name a few individuals from the past who were leaders that are considered servant leaders, talk about the man who coined the phrase servant leadership and laid out some of the ideals and concepts that have evolved into the modern movement of servant leadership. I'll also give an explanation of the concepts and why we need servant leadership. And finally, I'll give some of the characteristics of a servant leader, discuss these characteristics and how they can be implemented. Leadership comes in a multitude of roles. A mother or father lead their children. The leader of a nation. Some nations' populations are literally over 1 billion. So on one hand, you have a leader leading one person, and on the other you have a leader leading literally over 1 billion people. Just shows you the different levels of complexity and various roles that a leader can fill, or who can be considered a leader. But all leaders can practice servant leadership. A few well-known leaders from the past who were considered servant leaders would be Abraham Lincoln, Mother Teresa, Dr. Martin Luther King. All of these individuals are considered servant leaders because ultimately they put the well-being of those they led above their own welfare. The man who coined servant leadership, Robert Greenleaf, in 1970 he wrote an essay, "The Servant as a Leader." He had thought about this a long time. He had read a book, Journey to the East. It was about a group of people on a religious journey. And in this group there was a simple servant, a man who did menial tasks. And everyone liked the guy. They drew a lot of energy from him. And when he mysteriously disappeared, the group dispersed, and they never accomplished their goal of meeting this religious leader. But in the book, they found out later that the leader was actually the guy in their group who was the servant. And I guess this book caused Mr. Greenleaf to ponder what a leader really was. He was a management researcher at AT&T. And he went on to be a college professor, a public speaker, and author. And he started the foundation of the movement of servant leadership and laid out some of the concepts that people still talk to and add to today. Servant leadership to some people is kind of contradictory. How can you be a leader and serve people at the same time? It's not necessarily doing things for the people you lead. I mean, it can be, but it's really an idea. It's that every decision you make, everything you do, and everything you say as a leader is motivated by the best interest of those you lead and nothing else. Not how much money can you make or anything for yourself or someone outside of it. It's that the position of leadership exists to serve those who need a leader, and you're helping them reach a goal. Why do we need servant leadership? I mean, it's self-explanatory. We need people in leadership roles making decisions that are based on those they lead and not, of a selfish nature. What makes a servant leader? What are the characteristics of a servant leader? Well, Dr. John Klein at Troy University has something that's called the 30 shoulds of a servant leader. And we're going to go over the first 5 of those shoulds tonight. The first one is a leader should be a servant. And we touched on that. That basically means that you as a leader, everything you do is based on serving those you lead and acting in their best interest. The second of Dr. Klein's characteristics is a sound moral compass. A leader should have a sound moral compass. And I explain this by how can you lead people down the right path if you're not on it? If you're not doing the right things, people you're leading are going to find out. You're going to lose your influence, and basically you'll cease to be a leader at that point. So you have to, if you're going to lead people down the right path, you have to be on the right path. You have to lead by example. And the third characteristic is a leader should strive for greatness. A leader has to inspire and motivate the people he's leading. And if they are just there to do the bare minimum, they're not going to motivate and inspire anyone. So if you're not striving for greatness, then you're not going to be an effective leader, and eventually you'll cease to be a leader. The fourth characteristic is mission first and people always. Dr. Klein calls this a dual focus. It basically means don't focus just on the mission or just on the people. You have to focus on both, because they're both equally important. Without the mission, you know, what are you doing? If you're leading people, there has to be a common goal, a common cause. And if you lose sight of that goal and begin just listening to, unreasonable demands or things that aren't going to get you to that goal, eventually you're not looking out for the best interests of the people you're leading. And vice versa, if you're only looking at the mission and you lose your people, you're never going to reach your goal. So you have to keep your eye on both. And it's a dual focus kind of thing. And the fifth characteristic of the fifth of the five that we're going over is leaders should demonstrate balance. Dr. Klein lays out 4 areas: intellectual, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Intellectual, it goes back to leading by example. You always should be trying to learn and acquire knowledge. Emotional, you can't lose your temper or become hopeless in a bad situation. People are going to struggle in certain areas that you're leading, and being a leader, you're going to be under somewhat of a microscope, and you have to, it comes back to leading by example again. Physically, spiritually, people have to draw energy from you. You're going to have to bring energy to the job, energy to the mission, to the goal, to the organization, whatever it is you're doing. And you have to balance that, and it really comes back to leading by example. So you're going to have to be a balanced person, so they have someone to look up to. And so when they fall short, you're not going to be perfect, but you got to at least show that you're doing everything you can to do everything you do a little bit better than the day you did it before. So in summary, we've talked about the history of servant leadership, named some past leaders, the man who coined the phrase. We've talked about what the concept is, what it means to be a servant leader. And we went over some of the characteristics that make up a servant leader and discussed what they mean, day-to-day journey of being a leader. So I would like to conclude my speech on servant leadership by giving you a quote from a Chinese philosopher, 4th century BC. And it shows you how long the concept, maybe not the coining of the phrase, but servant leadership has been around for a very long time. And this guy wrote in the 4th century BC, he wrote, "The highest type of ruler is one whose existence the people are barely aware." I'd like to thank you. You all have a good night.